Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe you don't notice, but I might sound a little different. Hopefully it sounds a little bit better, a little bit more high quality. This is the first episode with a slightly improved microphone and setup here in the home studio. Almost quit podcasting altogether, trying to set it up because directions were not clear in how to set up the new mount. And so after drilling what came to be two very unnecessary holes in my desk, finally figured it out, got it set up and got the new microphone, and it's really nice. And so hopefully there's at least a slight improvement on the quality. Over 150 episodes in, I feel like this is going to be a thing for a while. So yeah. What are we talking about this week? Serial killers. This is the fourth serial killer sampler, and we got three stories here of Dennis Nilsen, Charles Albright, and then the first story after the fancy music will be of John George Haigh. John George Haigh was born on July 24th, 1909, to parents who were both members of the Plymouth Brethren. This was just a very, very conservative Protestant group that basically holds the Bible as the ultimate authority over literally everything, including like any sort of constitution or any other governing document that everyone else is legally obligated to adhere to. So like they just didn't recognize any kind of formal government laws, statutes, or whatever if it conflicted with their religious beliefs. And so because of that, John suffered from several like religious themed nightmares as a child, right? Because like, look, outside of just, holding the Bible as like the ultimate governing authority, like they were also probably telling all of the super horrifying Bible stories, right? Just talking about how Jesus is going to come back and he's going to just absolutely murder everyone who didn't believe. Or maybe if you maybe kind of sinned, horrifying demons would come and possess you and just destroy your entire life. And you do that enough to a small child, they're going to have nightmares. It's unavoidable. However, as with most kids who are raised in strict religious environments tend to do, John also became a talented piano player. And that tracks 100%. Like I grew up in a very religious area, practicing your instruments, namely piano, very, very common, right? A lot of great piano players, a lot of good singers, because that's all you do. Every week you play piano and you sing hymns. And look, there's a translation to developing the skill. So I get it. In 1934, John married Betty Hamer, but the marriage quickly fell apart. He was sent to jail on fraud charges, which caused Betty to divorce him. And then they both ended up giving up the daughter that they had for adoption. And for all of that, right, especially coming from, again, a very strict religious family, John's family disowns him, right? Like it was bad enough that he went to jail, right? But then he got divorced. Gross. What are you? Are you just some kind of devil worshiping heathen defying the sanctity of marriage by getting a divorce? Gross. All right. Ew. Anyone who gets a divorce, disgusting, right? I don't care. Actually, that's not my opinion. It happens, right? It's not a big deal. With literally no one to turn to, John moves to London and he starts scamming people with fraudulent stock shares from people who were already dead, right? So like he would find the list of dead people in the obituaries, and then he would say that these people owned a company and that he was selling stock in that company, and like none of it was real. When his scheme was uncovered after he actually misspelled the name of one of the dead people on a letterhead, he was sent to jail for another 4 years. But once he got out, he went right back to his scams. Because, I mean, like, what else is he going to do? It's not like he's going to go be a decent person. But this time, though, it was different, right? Because John realized, like, the only reason that he kept getting caught for his scams was because people were alive to snitch on him and to catch his mistakes. And so he starts experimenting with sulfuric acid, and he realizes that he could very easily dispose of a body rather quickly and leave virtually no trace of any remains. So in 1943, John runs into his former employer, William McSwan. And John had always been really jealous of McSwan's lifestyle and just decided that he needed to die. So John invites him over, lures him down to the basement, and just clangs him over the head with something strong enough, right? Like just a cast iron skillet or something, to incapacitate him. And then John stuffed McSwan into a 40-gallon drum and poured sulfuric acid on top. 2 days later, he returned, opened up the barrel to find that McSwan had turned into just this unrecognizable puddle of goop, which he then just poured into the sewer, never to worry about ever again. However, it slowly kind of turned into like one of those classic comedy tropes where, like, you murder someone and then someone witnesses it. Okay, well, now you have to kill the witness, and then 2 other people witnessed it, and you have to kill, like, you just have to kill this never-ending string of witnesses. And that's kind of what happened here, because McSwan's parents, who relied on him to collect rent from their various London properties, were immediately very confused as to where their son had gone, why he had disappeared, why he hadn't told them anything. So John swoops in and he assures them that McSwan had just run off to Scotland to avoid getting called into action for World War II, and that he was there now to take over his duties. So it's like, Mom and Pop McSwan, don't worry about it. Your son's just a draft dodger. I'm here to collect the rent for you. Don't worry about a thing. However, McSwan's parents didn't really believe him, because it's like, why is one of our son's former employees who got fired because he kept going to jail now just suddenly back and trying to be a good person, right? So John keeps having to come up with all of these reasons as to why McSwan hadn't reached out, hadn't written, anything like that. And then as the war started coming to a close, John realized he couldn't keep this up anymore, so he brings McSwan's parents out to a secret location under the guise that McSwan had come into town for a surprise visit. And then once everyone was in place, John clubbed McSwan's parents to death and dissolved their bodies in acid. And then, just to make it real nice, he stole their pensions, sold all of their properties, and then moved into a nearby hotel. And like, he could have lived pretty comfortably after that, but instead he gambled all of the new money that he had away in 4 years. So by 1949, John had killed 2 more couples and an old lady using this same kind of storyline. He would fake interest in their properties, lure them down to a basement, kill them, take all of their possessions, sell them off, and then dissolve their bodies in acid. And so while all of this is going on, right, like, police are starting to try to investigate the disappearances. They're trying to see the patterns, and they start putting these pieces together. Police eventually learned that John was connected to all of them in some way. And when they searched his criminal record, they really started to think, like, okay, this guy's probably behind it. And so they searched his property. They initially found a dry cleaner's receipt from his most recent victim, along with references to the McSwan family. They then went to a workshop that John rented, where a pathologist took samples of sludge outside the property. And that sounds weird, but like, there was no direct path to the sewer, unlike in other buildings that John was operating in. And the pathologist report revealed that the sludge outside of this workshop contained human fat, gallstones, and a denture. And then they quickly rounded him up. John quickly confessed and was sent off to trial. He tried to plead insanity, but the jury did not care, and he was hanged on August 10th, 1949. Our next story here is of Dennis Nilsen, who was born on November 23rd, 1949 in Aberdeenshire on the northeastern coast of Scotland. His parents divorced when he was 3 years old. Gross. Just another child of divorce. Here's what we're learning today, kids, that if your parents get divorced, you're going to become a serial killer. Never mind the fact that my parents are divorced. That's irrelevant. I'm talking about you. And it's gross. And you should be ashamed of yourself, even though you had nothing to do with it, but you kind of did because secretly deep down inside, you knew it was your fault. Your parents got divorced. You knew it. It was all your fault. Your parents hate you. They resent you for that. I don't know what I'm saying. This is being ridiculous. So his parents divorced. Dennis Nilsen's parents divorced when he was 3 years old. And so he spent most of his childhood living in just the gray, soul-sucking Scottish countryside with his grandparents. When Nilsen's grandfather died in 1951, he became even more quiet and antisocial than he already was. And he resented the attention that his mother and grandmother constantly gave to his brother and sister. Like, he is just the forgotten child in all of this. And by the time Nilsen hit puberty, he realized he was gay. And he was initially ashamed of this and made attempts to molest both his brother and his sister to figure out what was going on with his own urges, which is a real weird experiment to take, right? Because it's like, he's sitting there, right? He's a teenager and he's like, oh God, I think I'm gay. God, I hope I'm not gay. I really got to be sure. How do I do this? All right. Should I try to find some pornography and see which person I'm attracted to? Nah. Should I just try dating, a guy and a girl and see, how I react? No, that seems like a lot of work. I do have a brother and a sister, right? And I could just go into their room one night and lift their pants down and just kind of see what they got going on there. See what my wiener does to that site. It is pedophilia, but desperate times call for desperate measures. We just got to do what we got to do, right? So he does this. He pretty much confirms that he's gay. So at age 14, he joins the British Army in hopes of just getting out of his small Scottish town and just finding a better life for himself. And Nilsen actually took a liking to the army life, if for no other reason than he was surrounded by strapping, muscly young soldiers all the time. Like, of course, that's going to be a gay man's fantasy. Joining the army and showering together with a bunch of dudes in the barracks and just man stuff, right? I assume that's how it goes. I wouldn't know. I don't know. But he starts drinking very heavily, and then he develops sexual fantasies involving young, slender males that would let him have his way with them, right? Just very obedient, submissive, wafy little gay guys, just letting him do whatever he wants with them. And those fantasies quickly transitioned to his imaginary partner being unconscious or preferably dead. So it's escalated very quickly at this point. So while working as a chef in various prisons and posts that were occupied by the British Army, Nilsen spent his free time kind of developing his own like weird, but very highly elaborate and detailed, like jacking off fantasies, right? Like he has to go so far very quickly. By the way, this is escalated so quickly. He has to go so far to the extreme to get a boner and do what he got to do that, like, it goes from imagining another gay fella, to imagining kind of a weaker, submissive gay fella who's just like, yes, do whatever you want with me. And then, probably because that voice might sound annoying, he then imagines that they're just dead and he can do really whatever he wants with them. And so after a little tweaking in his, living quarters, he found that he could use a freestanding mirror to and kind of position his body so that he couldn't see his own face so that would allow him to pretend that he was both the dominant and submissive partner in his own fantasy, right? So like he sets this little mirror up in his room and he can't see his own face. So like while he's just abusing himself, he's looking at the mirror and thinking, oh, hey, I'm doing that to some other guy, not to myself. And this is great. Life is, man, this is fantastic. I wish I'd known about this earlier. And so, he starts incorporating, on top of this now, he starts incorporating memories of dead bodies that he has seen during military actions, as well as the imagery from his favorite painting, which is weird how he does this. But his favorite painting was The Raft of the Medusa by Theodore Géricault, some French guy, which, if you don't know what this painting is, it's basically an old man is holding a dead boy while another dismembered man rests beside them. Probably some sort of like cannibal survival kind of situation. But Nilsen takes this very literally, like thinks that, oh yeah, this old man is like diddling this young boy and then they were eating this other guy together. And that's just what really turns me on. And so much of this audio can be taken very out of context. Anyway, it's fine. I'm not running for politics or anything one day. In 1972, Nilsen ended his military career as a corporal and then moved back to Scotland to be with his family. His mother immediately noted his lack of female companionship and that he, really, like, she really wanted him to settle down and start a family before beginning like his actual civilian career. And, I guess either his family was just in denial or they really didn't know. And so after a heated argument over gay rights, Nilsen's brother actually outed him to the rest of the family. And after that, which is unfortunate, like Nilsen rarely spoke to his family again. And then he moved to London to join the Metropolitan Police. But despite graduating from the police academy, Nilsen didn't really enjoy being an officer that much. And he actually missed the camaraderie that he had experienced in the army, because I guess police officers, they don't shower naked together in the same barrack. I don't know how it works. So after bouncing around a couple of other jobs, Nilsen found work as a civil servant, helping underskilled workers find jobs around the city. He actually excelled so much at this new position that he was promoted all the way to executive officer. But even with all of his professional success, Nilsen's personal life was really just not going that well. He's in and out of several relationships and none of them are working out. He starts believing that he's not good enough for anyone. And by 1978, he's just deciding that, fantasies are just fantasies. They're not doing it anymore. He needs to see the real thing. And so he starts killing people. In all, Nilsen ended up confessing to killing 15 people and trying to kill 7 others. Most of his victims were gay men that he lured back to his home with the promise of free booze. And then once he gets the guy inside, he would strangle them to death. And if, like on some occasions, like he only strangled them into unconsciousness, he would just double check and make sure they were dead by drowning them in his bathtub. And then once his victims were dead, Nilsen would then dismember the bodies and remove the organs. The bodies were tossed in a bonfire while the organs were dumped along a fence or flushed down the toilet because, organs, they're mushy and stuff, so you can flush them. On several occasions, right, Nilsen would just, draw maps of Hawaii all over of his victims' bodies, if you catch my drift, Nurk and his throbber there, distributing free literature just over these dead bodies like a psychopath. However, when police asked, he was very adamant that he never had full penetrative sex with those bodies because he wasn't a complete, gross freak of nature, right? He was very adamant. Officer, I didn't stick it in. All right. Just over the top. All right. Just treating it like a glazed donut, just bleh. And then that was it. That's all I needed. Didn't need to get in there, just over the top. All right. I'm not a complete piece of human trash. All right. I have standards, guys. So on February, I don't know why I got so defensive in that on behalf of a character. Anyway, on February 8th, 1983, Nilsen and several other tenants at the apartments of 23 Cranley Gardens started complaining to the landlord that the drains were getting backed up. And that's funny to me, right? Because Nilsen sitting there talking with his neighbors like, God, man, are your drains backing up? Like, I keep having these clogs and like nothing I do works. They just keep getting clogged. And the neighbors just said like, yeah, man, like I don't even use my sink that much. I always like scrape off my food into the trash. Like there's no reason for my pipes to be backed up. And they're just, I don't know if Nilsen, he was probably smart enough to understand why they were getting clogged, but he's trying to save face here. So the landlord ends up calling Dino Rod, the trusted name in drain unclogging in London since 1963. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's fine. I'm not the type to do like fake commercials, but that would have been a good place to do one. You know, just, "Oi, are your pipes backed up? Call Dino Rod, the trusted name in pipe unclogging in the city of London since 1963. Whatever. Anyway, plumber named Michael Catron arrived on the scene, opened up a drain cover on the side of the building, and immediately found just a mass of flesh and bone. Just like, oh, here's your clog. It's a person. And everyone's like, what? Who could it have been? You know, Nilsen's over there like, that's crazy. So, for whatever reason, like they didn't immediately call police, which is odd. Like instead he just like leaves and he goes back to his office and brings his supervisor out there, the next morning to do a more thorough investigation. And when they got there, they found that the pipes had been magically cleared away. There was no leftover people in there. However, Catron did discover 4 bones and a few pieces of flesh in a pipe that was leading to the top of the building where Nilsen lived. And thinking that the bones looked like they had come from a human hand, Catron finally calls the police. The remains were taken to a mortuary where the mortician did confirm that they used to belong to a living person. So 3 officers post up outside of the building, wait for him to come home from work, and then they followed him up into his apartment. When they go inside, they immediately smell rotting flesh. And then when Nilsen was informed that human remains had been found in his drains, he fakes shock and horror. It was just like, sir, do you know we found several human remains in your drains? What? No. Impossible. How is that even? What? I can't believe it. Who would do such a thing? And I gotta imagine the police sitting there like, really, dude? Really? You really gonna? Okay. So, but realizing that he had, finally been caught, Nilsen told police where they could find the rest of the body as long as he could provide a full confession down at the police station, which obviously they let him do. His trial began on October 24th, 1983 with 6 counts of murder and 2 more attempted murder charges. He was convicted of everything except one of the attempted murder charges for some reason, and was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years served, which that doesn't make any sense to me. He was transferred to various prisons where he would just openly intermingle with other prisoners in their butts, just letting a serial killer go around with access to all the butts, just completely unrestrained. Seems like not that much of a punishment, honestly. He eventually died in prison on May 12th, 2018. Our last story here is of Charles Albright, who started out as just a very brilliant young child, super smart. After being adopted into a very sheltered and impoverished family that was hyper-focused on their kids' education, Charles actually graduated high school at the age of 15 and then forged his way into the University of North Texas to begin pre-med studies because like he wasn't about to spend 3 years at like a dumb little community college and like wait. Like, no, he's going to go right into med school as soon as he could. When he wasn't doing his book learning, Charles enjoyed shooting small animals, gutting them, and then stuffing them under the guise that he eventually wanted to be a taxidermist, which that's fair. It's odd combination. Like, yeah, I'm a doctor and I also do taxidermy. One of those things is not going to be as good as the other. Can't imagine, right? Although his family, his family, like I said, they're really poor, right? Out in Texas, very poor. They somehow were able to afford to buy Charles his own gun, probably because, Texans have their priorities, but, because they got him his own gun, they actually couldn't afford the glass eyes used in taxidermy. So like, it's like this weird time, just like, well, Charles, we can get you a gun so you can shoot your animals that you're going to stuff, but we just can't afford the glass eyes. Right now, this gun here costs about $200. Glass eyes, shoot, man, you can get like a pack of 4 dozen for like $5, but we spent all your money on the gun. I don't know how much glass eyes cost in taxidermy. Maybe it's a lot more than that. I don't know. Either way, Charles had to resort to using buttons on the eyes of his stuffed animals, which that makes it so much creepier, right? Like, just imagine like a stuffed squirrel, and where his eyes would be is just these little buttons. And you got, maybe the thread is still wrapped around like the 4 holes in the middle. So it's almost like a little X pattern. And it's just chilling there with his little button eyes. That's creepy to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. A year into his college life, Albright was arrested for theft and sentenced to a year in prison. And then when he got out, he transferred over to the University of Central Arkansas, again for pre-med, but he was eventually expelled after getting caught with more stolen items. However, Albright was not about to be denied his college degree for a second time, so he broke into the university's offices, printed out a bachelor's and a master's degree with his name on it, and then forged the signatures of like the president and whoever else needed to sign off on that. Which is crazy because like he's only 16, 17, like he's only like, he can't be more than 20 years old at this point. And he's got like a forged master's degree. Okay. Albright would then go on to marry his college girlfriend, who was apparently too stupid to realize that Charles had somehow obtained 2 degrees literally overnight. It's like, how do you do that? Both eventually worked as high school teachers in Texas. Or no, I think this is in Arkansas. Meanwhile, Albright just kind of continued to forge documents and checks because he was apparently really good at it. He made it believable. Either that or like no one really cared to check on the documents and things that he was presenting. Either way. Eventually, however, Albright's wife got smart, left him in 1965, and that seemed to actually set him straight. And, he realized like, okay, well, this doesn't work apparently anymore. And so he stops getting into trouble. But, for some reason, it took 9 years for the divorce to be finalized. And it wasn't finalized until 1974. And at that point, he was arrested again for theft and sentenced to 2 more years in prison, but was released after only 6 months. At that point, however, Albright really did resolve to try to become a better person. Like, he moved into a new neighborhood. He befriended several of the neighbors who were happy to let this random dude just babysit their children, which is weird. I'm not like, I don't understand that move at all, right? Like, I can understand a new family moves in and they have like a teenage daughter who seems nice. Let that person babysit your kids, not this grown adult man. That's weird. And it also shouldn't surprise you that he was arrested for child molestation in 1981. However, he only received probation because what? Like, he has this extensive rap sheet already for theft and fraud. And then you're just going to let him go free with probation. Well, it's not like look, here's the thing. He touched a kid. Fine. That's not as bad as faking a whole degree. He defrauded a university out of tens of thousands of dollars. That's worse than touching a little boy's wiener like once or twice. It's like you can't say those things are equal. Defrauding university, much worse than touching wieners. Of course he got what? This is so insane to me. 4 years later, he married just an incredibly oblivious woman named Dixie, and the two lived together in Dallas, where Dixie supported Albright and paid all of the bills because he could not get a job. Like, any background check that was run on him, coming back with all this stuff, no one's going to trust him. Albright, however, did eventually get tired of Dixie's nagging because he didn't have a job. So he told her that he was going to go out and try to find something. To Dixie's surprise, Albright returned home one evening and announced that he had picked up a paper route and would just go out early each morning and make the deliveries. Instead, he was not delivering papers. He was going to go out early every morning. He was definitely doing that, but instead of delivering papers, he was murdering prostitutes and surgically removing their eyeballs from their heads. And I love how this story has come full circle, right? I've Chekhov gunned this entire story because I mentioned the taxidermy up front, mentioned how he couldn't afford realistic glass eyes. And so what does he do? He finally becomes an adult and he just is racked with failure, but he has all this medical training and he just sucks at life. And then he goes out and he's just going to start removing eyeballs and going back oh God, it's so satisfying, right? Well, on March 22nd, 1991, Albright was arrested and charged with the murders of 3 Dallas area prostitutes, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. So spends the rest of his life in prison. And look, here's the thing. I like to think, and as he was removing those eyeballs from those dead prostitutes, he was probably like, I got him now, mama. I got the eyes. Mr. Squirrel's gonna be complete. Gonna get him his actual eyeballs now. And, so even more, like, I hope like his family never got rid of those dead squirrel puppets or whatever he had, like I really do hope that somewhere buried in somebody's basement or up in somebody's attic somewhere, I hope there are like squirrels or rabbits or something with just rotted prostitute eyeballs sewn into their furry heads. That would be the greatest find ever. All right, the 4th serial killer sampler in the books. Literally, they are all in books that I have written. So, yeah, screw it. Let's just no need to drag it on. Let's see what we learned today. What did we learn? Number 1, if you're going to murder someone and dissolve their body in acid, make sure that the person you're going to murder is not going to be heavily missed by a lot of people. Make sure that they don't play a very important role in other people's lives, because those people are going to start asking questions and you're not going to have the answers to them. And then you're going to have to just kill everyone involved and you're eventually going to get caught. And that's just what happens. All right. Number 2, again, I've said this before, like if you are at a point where you need to imagine someone dead in order for you to make it to the finish line, per se, you should go get help, right? You should go talk to somebody, or maybe just understand that this life is not going to afford you that pleasure, and you're going to just have to wait to see what happens after you die, or fast track it and kill yourself. I don't know. Seems harsh, but Also, you just don't need to do that, I think. Number 3, Charles Albright. Listen, if you're in Texas and you're listening to this right now, you don't have to get your kids a gun. It's not state law. I'm pretty sure it might be, but you're under no obligation to get your kid a gun. All right. Nurture some of their other hobbies. All right. Because as we've seen here, when you choose guns over something innocent like glass eyes for taxidermied animals, you create a serial killer who then removes eyeballs, to use for his, stuffed creations. Next week on Our Weird World, we're going to do the 4th edition of our Weird Fun Bag. So that's a nice little way that lined up. The 4th edition of our Serial Killer Sampler this week, and then the 4th edition of our Weird Fun Bag next week. And woo boy, it's going to be a good one. All right. We're going to talk about Satan. All right. Satan's going to make an appearance next week. We're going to talk about a meth warrior. Meth, always a fun topic. And we're going to talk about a frozen dead guy. All right. I get it. It's random, but it's right up the alley for the entire theme of this show. So come back next week to hear those stories. And that's it. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird. $7 a.m. waking up in the morning. Gotta be fresh. Gotta go downstairs. Gotta have my bowl. Gotta have cereal. Seeing everything. The time is going. Ticking on and on. Everybody's rushing. Gotta get down to the bus stop. Gotta catch my bus. I see my friends. Kicking in the front seat. Sitting in the back seat. Gotta make my mind up. Which seat can I take? Oh, no, not yet. Not yet. 7:45, we're driving on the highway. Cruising so fast, I want time to fly. Fun. Think about fun. You know what it is. I got this. You got this. My friend is by my right. I got this. You got this. Now you know it. It's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday. Everybody's looking forward to the weekend. Friday. Getting down on Friday. Everybody's looking to the weekend. Yesterday was Thursday. Today is Friday. We so excited. We gonna have a ball today. Tomorrow is Saturday. And Sunday comes afterwards. I don't want this weekend to end.